Welcome to the Achieve Results Now podcast, the podcast that gives you immediate actions you can take to start seeing life-shifting results now. Hey everybody, welcome to the Achieve Results Now podcast. This is Mark Cardone
and Theron Feidt.
You know, we experience this one thing every day when we go out to different businesses, when we get on the phone, and sometimes it can be very frustrating. But we're talking about customer service today, and not just customer service as it relates to our interaction with businesses, but customer service as it relates to our personal interactions with people and how we can be of better service and better communication to the people that mean a lot to us in our lives.
Yeah, I think this is a super important skill to develop, and certainly some people have it what we would call natural, but I think that's probably because they learned it from an adult. You know, they're modeling an adult, so I don't necessarily think it's it just automatically, you know, maybe you have it, maybe you don't. But it definitely is a skill that you can develop, a skill you can improve, a skill that you can model from others if you didn't learn it when you were a child.
Yeah.
And this is something I think is probably missing more now than when we were younger. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. And we all know why. You know, people are stuck in their phones, and adults included. It's not just the kids, it's the adults as well. And I just think anytime you're in public, you need to be different. Don't be yourself, because yourself at home isn't usually the self you want to be out in public.
Right.
You know, so don't be yourself. And that's one of the dumbest, that's one of the dumbest pieces of advice that you can ever have for anybody is be yourself, because no.
Sometimes yourself is not the right fit for the puzzle.
No, it is not. Be better than yourself.
It's interesting because, you know, like, I mean, we think about, you know, customer service, and really what customer service is it's a form of leadership, you know, and I think one of the things that does, you know, get forgotten about in a lot of businesses is, you know, that need to be a leader, that need to, you know, because why do we go to leaders, right? Like, if you're listening to this, why do you go to your supervisor? What do you go to them for? You go to them for leadership, right? You go to them to solve a problem. You go to them to guide, right? And I think, you know, when something breaks, when my car breaks down and I call the service department, right? That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that guidance. I'm looking for, as much as it doesn't immediately ring in my head, like, I'm looking for some kind of leadership, somebody to take charge and fix the thing. You know, in our day-to-day lives, whether you're a business owner, whether you're, you know, a person in a family, whatever it is, like, this skill set will help you have those better interpersonal relationships. I'm talking about something that's less now than it was because we're so engulfed in our technology, interpersonal relationships, you know, that ability to effectively connect with people and help them get, you know, to the next stages that they need to.
Right. So at the very least, this podcast is going to be a huge game changer for people. You know, really, but it also could be just a reminder of things maybe you failed or stopped doing, or for whatever reason, like we all do. We all of a sudden we're doing something, we're doing great, and then we stop doing it, and it wasn't for any specific reason. It's just we forgot. It fell out of our mind, whatever. And I think some of these things can be the same. You know, that I used to do that, and then you adopt it again, and now you're in it again.
I love how you said at the very least, this is going to be a huge game changer.
Yes, absolutely.
And you know, you know, if you listen to this podcast and you take action, which you can, because these are 3 actionable steps you can do now with an exclamation point. When? Now. But really, you know, I think that's such a great cap, you know, for this section of the podcast, is to say, you know, these things will change your life if you do them.
Yes. Yep.
For the better. For the better.
Yes.
That's
for the better.
Because a lot of things can change your life immediately, but let's talk about for the better. So let's get into step 1. Sorry, I was sipping my coffee. So step 1, which, you know, this is such a powerful move. I did it this morning when we were picking up one of my kids' friends for school. She got in the car, and the 3 of us clapped. We wooed. We were like, welcome to the car. And step 1 is really about treating and treating people like a VIP.
Right. Yes.
Right.
This is something I can just let you talk about this because this is one of your biggest and best qualities, I think. I see that the dojo, you just made an example of what you did this morning in your personal life with bringing your girls and their friends to school. And this is what you do. And this is why people like you.
Mhm.
Right. And I think having people like you is a good skill to develop
Yeah.
because it's way better than the alternative. And you should not do it to get something. You shouldn't do it manipulative, but you should do it because it's the right thing to do. And your goal should be to spread your
Yeah.
positivity.
100%. And I think, going to Dale Carnegie, right? The
Yep.
one thing, the main desire that people have is that need to feel significant. You know what I
Yep.
mean? That need to feel important. So, I mean, if it were me, I would clap for everybody every time. If
Yep.
if I had that kind of time and my hands wouldn't wear out, I would applaud everybody when they walk in the room. Like it
Yep.
is, people should feel like you're happy that they're there.
Right.
And especially when we're talking about this context, when somebody may have a problem,
Yeah.
because why don't we talk to people about our problems? Because we
Hmm.
don't want to be a burden, right? We
Right.
don't want to, be annoying. And,
Right.
and, listen, does it get a little annoying when someone has the same problem over and over again and you give them solutions and they don't take
Right.
action?
Hmm.
Of course it does, but that doesn't change the fact that you should still understand that they need that
Right.
feeling of,
Right.
hey, you can come to me, like you're important.
Right.
Let's do
Hmm.
this.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it just sets the tone for the conversation, sets the tone for the day, sets the tone for the meeting, whatever you're doing. It just sets a way better tone. Um, Taking the things that you're dealing with in your head and the things that we all struggle with at certain days, if we're putting that upon people by not greeting them, by doing the opposite of what our tip is, treating them like a VIP, I don't think that's the right way to be.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean that when you're home with your spouse or with a good friend having coffee, you can still talk about problems, but you can still greet them
Yeah.
happily.
Hmm.
Even if you're not happy, you can be happy to see them. So you may
Yeah.
be dealing with some serious issues, you can still be happy to see them. So I think that this is step one for a reason because it's the
Yeah.
start and it sets the tone for the rest of the conversation you're having, the rest of the day you're having, the trip, whatever the case may be.
Yeah. And I think this is such an easy one to act on because you can do it literally anywhere there's other people, right? You can do
Right.
it, I mean, in my opinion, most importantly at home, when your spouse is talking to you, put your phone away,
Yeah.
and make eye contact and listen. Turn off the TV. Don't have your spouse be that second screen that you're sort of paying attention to,
Right.
right? Make your spouse feel like a VIP.
Hmm.
When you're at the coffee shop getting your coffee, you know, ask the person how they are and actually listen, like actually pay
Right.
attention when they speak.
Hmm.
But it's such an easy one to put in action. Greet people and treat them like a VIP.
Right.
Great tip.
Yep. Yep. So number two, this takes a little bit more skill, takes a little bit more focus, and this one is talking about listening like it's your job. Now, of course, if you're referring to this and you're thinking of how can I improve my career, then yes, it is your job. However, we're also talking about when you're just talking to a friend, really, and I like what you said. You kind of moved into it a little bit because one and two tie in. One is the initial part, and this step two is the follow through, the action. So if you greet them like a VIP, and then 5 minutes later you're on your phone as they're talking to you and you're half listening to them, that then you just really erase what you did in the beginning. It
Yeah.
didn't really matter. So number two is talking about really be present, be in the moment when you're with somebody.
Yeah.
That's very important. In customer service is paramount, but if you want to build a relationship and keep a relationship, it's also paramount.
Yeah. And this is I really like this step from a customer service perspective and how it applies to life because I'm Stephen Covey, right? Seek first to understand, then to be
And
understood, right?
right,
We listen so we can really understand what that person needs, right?
Right.
What that person is trying to tell us. And
Right.
sometimes that's verbal.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's more like, like body cues and facial
Mm-hmm.
cues. Like,
Mm-hmm.
people who are great listeners aren't just using their ears, they're using
Right.
their whole self.
Right.
But it's funny, I have to tell the story because I think this is when I first got into sales. I remember the guy that was teaching me how to sell stuff said, "Don't feel like you have to provide a solution immediately."
Mm-hmm.
And I got a text a few weeks ago from a woman who works for an insurance company, and it was, I get them a lot. I own a real estate company. It was, hey, if any of your clients need homeowners insurance, keep me in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I absolutely will. Personally, I do a lot of commercial real estate, so it's more business, so you probably won't hear from me much, but if I have anybody, I'll keep you in mind.
Yeah.
And then she goes, oh, well, I do commercial insurance too.
Mm.
And I was like, okay. And then the conversation went on, but every time I would say something, she would just respond with another product that she had.
Oh.
So there was very little listening,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
very little trying to be of service.
Mm-hmm.
And really, it was just trying to get me to do the thing she wanted me to do.
Right.
And it made me think of that from a relationship standpoint, because how often do we do that in our household, at our
Sure.
job,
Yeah.
where we're listening, but we're really listening because we want something,
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to get it, right?
Yeah.
So I think that ability to just listen and really understand, like what will build this relationship stronger, what makes a better bond, is an important skill to develop.
Yeah. And to me, it's like uh, she turns you off. It's almost it's like if I was in your situation, I'd feel like, well, she would have been better off me just looking her up online and just
Yeah,
guessing, oh, I'll just go with her because now I'm not going to go with her.
right.
So she did the exact opposite of what her intent was by her actions.
Yeah. Well, and I think about this with martial arts training because we talk to people all the time,
Mm-hmm.
who call in yesterday I spoke to somebody, it was an adult, trying to get into the martial arts, right? Getting started. And, when he first started talking, it's self-defense, right? He wants
Yeah.
self-defense.
Mm-hmm.
But why isn't he coming in? Because, his life is stressful. He has trouble making time for himself,
Mm-hmm.
and as you're listening to him talk, right? He's saying the loud part, kind of under the radar, but
Mm-hmm.
he needs everything else that martial arts does, right? He needs
Right.
the balance, the discipline, the time of his own thing.
Right.
And you have to be able to listen to people to understand that, right?
Right.
And I think the outcome was better because it wasn't just, oh yeah, well, we can teach you how to kick people, like that's like that's
Right.
on the sign, right? We can do that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's the other stuff that he really needs, and trying to fit that. I think that's a really good way to build better relationships.
Yeah. It's amazing when you start really truly listening to people how much you find out. And anybody in sales knows that they're usually their first thing they say isn't the biggest.
Hmm.
So it doesn't go in order of priorities. So if they give you three reasons why they want to do something, most often it's the last reason. And the reason behind that is often trust. If you're
Yeah,
first meeting somebody, you're not going to just most people aren't going to be like, oh yeah, I'm just low in confidence. I really need to work on that and I'm out of shape. They're going to give you some other things,
yeah,
first until they can trust you. So that's where the listening can definitely help for sure. And I love how you reminded us in the beginning of you need to do this with the important people in your life, the
yeah,
people that are around you that you live with, and that can be difficult. That I think often takes a reminder for you, to make
yeah,
sure that you don't treat them differently in a bad way, but you should treat them better.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So moving on to number three. So this one is if there's a problem and in customer service when somebody's talking to you, usually there's something. It doesn't have to be a big problem. It doesn't even have to be something that you did, but it's something they want to fix. They want to improve. If they're going to buy something from you, in the case that we use all the time, I'm not going to use the boat analogy, but I will use martial arts, uh, like exactly what you said. You were talking to an adult wanted wanted to join for self defense, but as through your talking, you learn that it's more of getting his life in order. Um, and so by listening, you did that. So solving the problem is, offering that solution. Here's what we can do. This is what works. Being the authority without being authoritative.
Yeah.
So talking confidently, say yes, we can do this, and you have to do that oftentimes by giving them real life examples. That third party reference of things.
Yeah. When I think of this, I think of my kids, right? Because and anyone who has kids look at this because kids never come to you and say, "Dad, I have a problem." Right. And,
Right.
and you have kids. Like I'm sure
Yeah.
it's rare for a kid to
Yeah.
say,
Once in
"I
a
have a
while, but it's
problem."
rare.
Right.
Yep.
What they say is, "This is what happened during my day."
Yeah.
Right. And what do? We listen, but we kind of tune out a little bit because I don't know about you guys. I have teenage girls. Those
Yeah.
stories can go 300 miles, like gusts faster than Zig Ziglar. Like just
Yeah.
and the issue is that if we're not listening, we're missing those little things that they tell
Yeah.
us under the
Yeah.
radar that so that listening is really important. But then as we're getting into it, trying not to get lost in the emotion, right? Trying to
Hmm.
find ways that we can be of service, right?
Right.
Customer service.
Right.
Maybe it's not a problem that needs to be solved. Maybe it's I lost my earring today, right?
Right.
You know what I could do, man?
Right.
I could either help her find it or I could buy her a new pair or I could,
Right.
and even her not saying that, but me doing it anyway. We talked a little bit earlier offline about solving the problem before it's a problem.
Right. Yep.
So I think, being able to do that, being able to use the information that comes out when you're listening and
Hmm.
convert that into ways you can serve other people, and then putting that into action makes you such a valuable person to them.
Right.
And really, that's what we all want, right? We want to be
Yep.
people of value.
Yep. Now, I'm give you a caveat. Now, if you're talking to your wife, she doesn't want a solution. She just wants you to listen.
Hmm.
This was the hardest, and I still get it wrong often, but this was probably the longest learning curve of anything I've ever learned. That because like you, I'm a problem solver,
Yeah.
and I'm quick at it. Like I formulate in my head as you're talking, and I have a solution right away. And if you
Hmm.
do it, you know what I mean. In many areas, it's a little annoying because that's the only thing that comes to my head. That I have to not think about that and then just kind of listen and not say
Yeah.
anything. That's like the hardest thing for me. And again, I still get it wrong. Um, However, if you're talking business wise, this is vital because if somebody's coming to you, unless they're just shooting the breeze with you, that's a little different because we have that at the dojo. We build
Yeah.
long-term relationships, and we have parents that aren't even our students. They've just been parents for 10 years, and we know them very well. I mean, we know them as well as any other friend or acquaintance. And so, once in a while we'll have that, and there's not a solution for them. They're just
Yeah.
talking and just talking about their day. But when you're dealing with customers, is if they're coming to you, they're coming to you with a problem. They might not call it a problem. It might be an irritant to them. It might be just something, a suggestion, something they want to change, something to make it better. But they're telling you that they might not be your customer for much longer if this
Right.
problem isn't solved. I mean, that's how you have to think of it. Anytime somebody's talking to me about that, I'm almost paranoid of the fact that I'm going to take extra action to make sure that they like it.
Yeah.
I'd rather err on the side of okay, they didn't want to quit, they just had a little problem that needed to be solved. Then they're fine. They've been here for 10 years. They'll never quit because that's when it sneaks up on you.
And I love that you brought up the spouse thing because that is like the quintessential thing, right? We try to solve the problem
Yeah.
and people don't want the problem to be solved. They just want
Right.
they want people to listen. And if I mean
Yeah.
talk about digging deep on my personal beliefs,
Yeah.
I think, the tech has really pulled that feeling of significance away from people. So we have a lot of people who are walking
Yeah.
around, and we see this in customer service from a business standpoint,
Yeah.
but we also see this in customer service, from a home standpoint,
Hmm.
is a lot of times when people come to you with a problem, even if it's, hey, my widget's broken,
Right.
a lot of times, yes, they want their widget broken, but what they really want is someone to listen to them talk
Right.
and hear what they're saying and understand and make them, all the
Hmm.
things we just said, make them feel important, right?
Right.
And I think if solving the problem, like if you get through all of these and you solve somebody's problem and they felt listened to and important,
Hmm.
you will win in
Right.
the people business.
Right. Yep. For sure. For sure. Yeah. I think this last step, you have to decide, understand the situation,
Yeah.
understand. So it may go in one direction, may go in the other, but I think oftentimes when you're talking to people, they're there, for your advice. They're
Yeah.
there to solve a problem, and you can do it very subtle too, so that way it doesn't seem like it's advice as well. So
Yeah.
learning how to do that, and then sometimes you might just silently help them.
Hmm.
So they didn't ask for help, but maybe they had a problem with something. You can talk to somebody that that can move them in the right direction, or you can put a good word in for them. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do that are very subtle, and aren't direct, that can help somebody.
Maybe you've listened to somebody and they've told you that people skills are a challenge for them, and you can help
Yes,
them. You can solve the problem by sending them this podcast.
yes,
And and,
share for sure.
like really, I think about the number of times I've had coffee with somebody. I mean, Daryl Sanford, we've had him on the podcast,
Oh
once
yeah,
or
great
twice,
guy.
once, twice, three times. Great guy
Yep,
with John Maxwell Coaching. We had coffee the other day.
we should have him on again. By the way,
100%,
it's been a
100%.
while.
Daryl's listening. Daryl, let's get you on again.
Yeah,
But I remember I had coffee with him. We talked about stuff, no problems discussed. Just
yeah,
like you
yeah.
and I, just a good coffee. But
Yep.
he sent me a podcast that he heard that related to something we talked about, and it was
Yeah,
very helpful.
right.
To what I was going through, and it solved a problem that I didn't even know I was really dealing with.
Isn't that
Right? Because
awesome?
and so that is a great example of,
Hmm.
if you don't want to be somebody who's like, hey, you have a problem, let me fix it.
Right, right, right,
Sometimes later you'll think of it and you can go, hey, let me send them,
right.
this ebook I read or this,
Yeah, yeah,
I think that's great. So
yeah.
anyway,
Well,
let's
that's
review,
that's a great one. Yep.
yeah, let's review our steps. So number one,
Okay.
my favorite, greet
Yes.
people and treat them like a VIP. Make them feel important. Hugs, high fives, eye contact, all the things. Clap when they walk in the room if you're so inclined. But yeah, make people feel important.
Yeah. Number two is listen like it's your job. Now, sometimes it is your job, so do that. But what it's really talking about is listen actively, not just passively. Don't be on your phone as you're listening, or think you're listening. Have give your full attention to somebody that's talking to you, because that shows how important they are to you.
Yep, absolutely. And then the last one, solve the problem. Don't get caught up in the emotion, but do the best you can to actually provide some kind of a solution to add value, customer service, be of service to them in a way that benefits them, not you,
Hmm. Right.
first, right? And
Right.
and if you do that, like I said, these three things so actionable, and could have so much impact on your personal
Yep. For
relationships.
sure.
And remember, share this with somebody who needs help with their
Yes.
personal relationships. Don't text them and say, "Hey, I know you're bad at personal relationships, so here," because that would be like the opposite of everything we just said.
That is
But
quite the opposite.
definitely share this with somebody who would get something out of it, and we will see you on the next episode.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening. Hop over to our website at www.achieveresultsnow.com to get your free copy of our book, Ignite Results, 4 specific daily actions to help you achieve results now. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Achieve Results Now. Thanks for listening, commenting, and subscribing. Now get out there and achieve results now.